2024 really sucked for Dragon Ball. 2025 is here, and that marks the end of what was perhaps Dragon Ball's worst year ever. Now, I'm not saying Dragon Ball hasn't had bad years in the past, as everything and everyone does, but for what was seemingly a year full of promise, it ended up being a year full of shock, loss, and uncertainty. The year started off strong, with new and exciting content after all, and with the impending arrival of a new anime in Dama, it was set up to finish strong as well. The major event that changed everything was the loss of series creator Akira Toriyama, turning that promise into sadness and uncertainty of the future. It was almost like a snowball effect, as everything that followed made everything for Dragon Ball even more difficult. If you don't remember, 2023 was also a rough year for the franchise, mainly Dragon Ball Super. We didn't have any new movies or animes to watch after all, but we did have the manga, the main thing keeping Dragon Ball Super afloat, but it spent 2023 retelling the event of the superhero movie, which we'd already seen the year prior. So 2023 was a year of almost no new content. I know a lot of us were hoping that 2024 would be a year of new stories being told. We had been waiting for Super to follow up on Black Frieza after all, so we just had to get through the superhero retelling, and in the beginning of 2024, we did. We finally got past it and had some promising chapters featuring new content. Gohan going to Beerus's planet and sparring with Ultra Instinct Goku was exciting to see, but most importantly, it wasn't something we had already seen. We were finally back in new and unknown territory, so we once again had a reason to actually pay close attention to the manga again. But to no one's surprise, interest in the DBS manga as a whole had waned as it took the better part of a year to retell a story we could fully consume in an hour-and-a-half movie, which we'd already seen originally almost a year prior when it first came out. There were no notable changes to the retelling, so we had little reason to consume the chapters being published monthly. I get it being adapted to the manga for continuity's sake, but the sacrifice you make is the interest of the audience, and when 2024 finally began, we were well over a year with nothing new, so when we finally got the chapters with Gohan, Goku, and the others on Beerus's planet, it was eaten up by everybody. It was fun seeing Goku spar with Gohan, so the direction they were taking showed promise, and it was a good way to start the year, but it just wouldn't last. Because just a few chapters into that hot start with new content, Toriyama passed away, and the manga went on an indefinite hiatus. That hiatus continues even in 2025, with very few updates regarding a potential return, beyond just a one-shot story about Goten and Trunks. It's not shocking that a significant event like the passing of the series creator will result in the series going on a break. It's probably the right thing to do even, but it does result in the product suffering as a whole. Without new content being churned out, there's nothing to keep everyone coming back to the series on a monthly basis. And unfortunately, the longer that continues, the more impatience will grow. If this had come on the heels of a long and exciting arc, and not right after a complete story retelling, which had killed interest already, I could see it not being as prominent of an issue. Going a year with no new content, then 1 or 2 months of something that really put us all back in, just for another long wait, is frustrating for many as fans of the franchise. Because in a way, we are approaching over 2 years of no new Dragon Ball Super content, and disinterest and impatience will only grow for many. But the main thing to keep in mind is that this hiatus was most likely not planned. Toru created the Dragon Ball Super manga with input from Toriyama, so not only did Toru need to grieve his passing, but the future direction of DBS without him needed to be determined, as it likely hadn't been set in stone. But the absence of the series that so many of us love only aided 2024 in being an overall very rough year for the series. 2024 was also a year devoid of many future announcements regarding the series. With the manga on an indefinite hiatus, we were never given a return date beyond just endless speculation about a potential return a year after the hiatus started. But with large events like Jump Festa taking place, a lot of people had optimism that announcements regarding the future of Dragon Ball as a whole were going to take place. You notice the manga, but also any info on potential new movies in production or the return of Dragon Ball Super anime, which had been done since 2018. But overall, this optimism was misplaced. No significant announcements came surrounding the future, no movie information, no manga information, no anime return date. So going into 2025, after such a bleak year, it's only natural we'd keep our expectations low now. There were plenty of opportunities for these announcements in the latter part of 2024, and with none coming, it makes you wonder if anything is even in production to begin with. The Dragon Ball movie has been mentioned several times over the past couple of years, but nothing definitive regarding a potential release date or production stages has been revealed. So for all we know, a movie could still be years away, and waiting around for an announcement is just a waste of time. The return of the Dragon Ball Super anime, on the other hand, continues to be speculated, with many hoping that 2025 is the year that it finally returns, but there's nothing substantial there either. And with the manga on hiatus, any potential planned return for the anime was probably postponed anyways. When beginning a new year, it's not abnormal to find excitement and anticipation for upcoming projects regarding your favorite series. I know I enjoy looking forward to a series, movie, or video game I know is releasing in the upcoming year, but the outlook for 2025 is very gloomy right now for Dragon Ball due to the carryover from 2024. No anime, no movie, will the manga even return? there's more questions than answers, which breeds uncertainty. Announcements are made to create excitement for the future after all, and give us fans insights into projects being worked on. You don't want to announce a movie a couple weeks before its release, as they won't have enough time to probably generate interest. That's why it's done ahead of time, so people can get prepared to go see it and get invested in the product for its arrival. So the longer we go without any announcements regarding the future, the more that uncertainty grows, and eventually some people may just stop caring, and their excitement as the prospect of a new movie or anime dwindles entirely. But right now, Dragon Ball has nothing set in stone for the future regarding the anime or manga. We'll probably get both again inevitably, but how long will that be? And how much will people still care by the time that rolls around? The reason Daima was negatively received by many is due to people being fed up for the weight of Dragon Ball Super, and the announcement of an unexpected Dragon Ball anime disappointed them as it failed to be what they'd gotten themselves excited for. Year after year, one of the biggest issues with Dragon Ball is the likely return of the Dragon Ball Super anime, which people continue to hope for. It's probably the most desired thing right now for the franchise, and each year that desire is met with silence. But the manga was always there to somewhat satiate people, but that also wasn't present in 2024. Well, it did have a bit of new content with Gohan sparring with Goku, but that was just a couple of months worth of chapters, and then it was back to nothing. Look at it this way. Imagine being a monthly manga reader and spending all of 2023 reading chapters retelling Superhero, which you can consume through a movie at any time on DVD, Blu-ray, or online. You're not interested in the content of the chapters anymore, you're just waiting for the chapter where it ends so something new can begin, which finally happens. Superhero retelling ends, you finally get a chapter or two of new content which had taken so long, just to almost immediately go back to nothing. Over a year of enduring, you get to taste something new and exciting, just to be left waiting again. That can be frustrating for readers of the Dragon Ball Super manga. Black Frieza happened all the way back in 2022. Dragon Ball Super has had hardly anything new since then, and we can only wait for so long before people start to lose interest. What Toriyama had planned before Toriyama's passing is unknown. I guess a lengthy hiatus wasn't originally in the cards, and it's not guaranteed that Black Frieza would have been the next story focus, but it would have been new content regardless. But what could have been a promising year for the Dragon Ball Super manga ended up being one where the manga was hardly featured at all. The lack of new announcements and the continued hiatus of the Dragon Ball Super manga are viable factors for 2024 being a bad year, but we know the root cause for a lot of that. The overwhelmingly main reason 2024 was such a dark year for this franchise was the tragic and sudden unexpected passing of Akira Toriyama. Losing the creator of a series would greatly impact many franchises, and Dragon Ball is no exception to this. The issues I've gone over were like a domino effect that likely were a result of his passing. The DBS manga probably went on break to help situate the future of the series without Toriyama's involvement, as it was both him and Toyotaro that guided the stories for each arc, each contributing in their own way with story decisions and designs. Not only that, but Toyotaro had a close working relationship with Toriyama, and he would naturally need time to mourn the loss of his mentor. We will remember 2024 for Dragon Ball primarily as the year Toriyama passed. If he was still with us, 2024 probably would have been a much more upbeat year for the franchise. Dragon Ball Super likely would have kept going with new content in addition to the arrival of Dragon Ball Daima, and perhaps some other works Toriyama had in store for us. But now we are left in the dark. What comes next for the franchise is what we are all asking ourselves. What direction will they take without him is anybody's guess, but what we can say for sure is that Dragon Ball will never be the same. If future stories are told, created by others, will it actually feel like Dragon Ball without Toriyama's guidance? That was a common issue with the Dragon Ball Super anime after all, the series going in directions that wasn't dictated by Toriyama in his notes. His passing also came at a time where Toriyama was really starting to love working on the series again, it seems. If you didn't already know, Toriyama often wasn't super involved with Dragon Ball Super. He'd provide rough outlines and some guidance, and then let Toyotaro and Toei fill in the holes. That's why the anime and manga have differences. They're different interpretations of Toriyama's direction. The Dragon Ball Daima reportedly had extremely heavy involvement from Toriyama, with him directly writing and approving the scripts for the series. It may have been the most he's been involved with modern Dragon Ball, so right when Toriyama may have been finding a new passion to once again be deeply involved with the series, tragedy struck. We don't know if he had any works beyond Dragon Ball Daima, such as a movie or future arcs that he had been involved in. A lot of people say Daima is his last work, but Daima had been in production for several years prior to his passing, meaning there was plenty of opportunity for Toriyama to work on other Dragon Ball related projects, but once again, only time will tell. Though Toriyama's passing brought great sadness for the franchise, there were a few saving graces for Dragon Ball in 2024. A few things that kept it from being entirely bad. The primary one was the first Dragon Ball anime since 2018 with Dragon Ball Daima, which is currently ongoing at the making of this video. While it has some who dislike it, it has been positively received overall, and has brought the feeling of humor and adventure back to the franchise, as Toriyama's involvement can be greatly felt, with its goofy nature and jokes. It's provided the experience of watching Dragon Ball on a weekly basis again for the first time since Dragon Ball Super. We also had the highly anticipated release of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, releasing alongside Dama, the successor to the Budokai Tenkaichi series fans have been asking for since over a decade ago. It was perhaps the most hype release of anything Dragon Ball this year, as it set records on sales and player activity on release day and had mostly positive reviews. Without Dama to entertain us on a weekly basis and Sparking Zero to play in our free time, or not even having either to look forward to, 2024 truly would have been a year for Dragon Ball with very few to maybe no redeeming qualities. A year of loss and disappointment that carries over into 2025. But towards the end of 2024 with the new releases, things started to look up a little bit to give 2025 not a completely bleak outlook. But it still remains an overall very bad year for the franchise. Now we just have to wait to see if 2025 will hold anything exciting for like new announcements, the return of Dragon Ball Super, or just any news regarding the future of Dragon Ball without Akira Toriyama. So let's hope that 2025 is a better year for Dragon Ball than 2024. What were your thoughts on the state of Dragon Ball in 2024? Do you agree with me that it was a very bad year for the franchise? Let me know down in the comments below. Please consider hitting the like button if you liked the video, consider subscribing to the channel if you like my content as it helps the channel grow. My name has been Champazard, thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.